Welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion, and we have no Raptor today. He's currently on a job, but we are here joined by our wonderful guest. Who are you?
Uh, La- Llamahat, I guess. Um, yeah, I am a world creator, and one of the commanders at Sonar. So, like the head and co-founder of Sonar, the music group.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on and get to meet you. How did you get started with world building and getting with Sonar? How'd you get in VRchat and everything? I'd love to hear the story.
So, VR chat, I started. Well, I hopped in. What? Nah. Okay, so my girlfriend saw like the pandemic. Well, we got together during the pandemic, and she basically went, "Okay, there's very little exercise to do now." And I was constantly talking about Beat Saber and rhythm games and VR because I've been interested in VR for a very long time, even before pandemic and whatnot. And she when you know what, I'm just going to transfer the amount that a Quest 2 costs into your bank account and say, like, do with it as you will. So ended up buying a Quest 2, really not wanting to go into VR chat because I had all these preconceived notions about, who was there, what kind of a platform it was. And I was like, oh, I really want to go into the Meta Horizons because I want to see what Meta is doing, like with the Horizon World stuff. So at one point, I left my headset connected to a VPN after side loading the VPN onto it and just leaving it there for like 48 hours on, like, with a piece of duct tape covered over the head sensor thing so that it would stay connected in order to change my account's profile location to like Canada, where it was actually released at the time,
Hmm.
because I'm based in the UK. And I finally ended up getting on and was severely disappointed. At which point I
Uh,
tried Alt Space, I tried Rec Room, which was an interesting experience. Um, and then I finally caved and I went, okay, I'm gonna try VR chat. First night was like I was on an airship with a giant chessboard. I played one match of chess with a complete stranger who was the only other person in that lobby, and then didn't touch it for like 2, 3 months. And when I finally came back, I went into Black Cat and met some of my closest friends literally on, I guess, not day one, but like day one coming back from it.
hmm.
Um, and then those people I still talk to like every day, and it just became a all right, every night hop on VR chat, meet a new person,
Hmm.
and they just kind of get added to our little collection, our little bundle of friends.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Wow.
that was how I got started, I guess.
Okay. So from there, what led you to building worlds and getting with Sonar? How did you get involved with that aspect of VRChat?
As like a couple of our friends used to kind of, world hop, and I'd always go into worlds, and I'm always like, oh, I want to know how that works, or I really like the idea of being able to create these virtual environments. But the thing that actually kind of made me go, okay, I need to do this, I need to figure out how to do it, was the world Aquarius by
Hmm.
Finns, who's obviously gone on to do stuff like Complex 7, which is an incredible just storytelling world and just an environmental masterpiece, quite frankly. Um, and yeah, it was that world that made
Hmm.
that kind of, made me go, okay, I need to actually sit down and figure this out. I need to know how they've done this.
Hmm.
Um, and it was, basic room, like I think 4 walls, a couple of couches and some cube lights like there are here, and a mirror that would launch you all the way out of the world because I didn't know about colliders. Um, and then once again, I just kind of like left it for 3 months. I was like, okay, made the world, cool, done, and I just kind of left it until, uh, yeah, I just started going again, and I just kind of haven't stopped since, and that's been nearly 2 years
Oh,
that I've
wow.
been making worlds.
Wow. That's impressive. How do you feel from where you started making worlds to now? Was it what you thought it was, or is it a lot more complicated? Do you view the whole thing differently now?
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of obviously different moving parts, and part of part of what I decided to focus on was dynamic lighting, and I saw LTCGI and I'd seen Aerial It, and it was actually the Conduit Club, the Tube Open X ish venue, that made me go like, okay, I want to start looking at that. Um, in terms of where I was versus where I am, obviously in 2 years you learn quite a lot about optimization, about modeling, about how these systems actually work, because it's not like they're overly basic systems, or like, I mean, Unity isn't user friendly by any
Hmm.
stretch of the imagination. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of different moving parts, and it's just learning piece by piece, day by day, that you get the kind of improvements.
Okay. Wow. So I'm going to ask you one more question about your history. How did you get involved with Sonar?
Yeah.
What is Sonar?
So Sonar is the community that myself and I think like 10 members of staff we have now. We started, well, the Discord was started a year ago yesterday,
Oh,
and then
wow.
the VR chat group was started. Uh, we've got our 1 year anniversary on the 14th of next month. Um, so we've been going for about a year. It was originally I was making a club for another DJ, and I was like, huh, I actually really like this, this idea of making clubs, making music worlds. And Subdefense, the other co-founder, was in one of those lobbies, and he decided to message me, and he was like, hey, like, I really like your worlds. I really think there's something here. Would you like to collaborate? Like, you can bring the world, I'll bring the DJs. And then we were like, huh, okay, how do we, piece this together? Because at the time, Tube was the only like group. Tube and Virality were the only groups that I really knew. Virality I built the world for, and then Tube I'd been to a bunch of events before Virality moved to their own
Hmm.
moved to their own world. Um, and Sub and I decided, like, okay, we should, put our heads together. I'll make the worlds, they bring the DJs. And then we've brought on our QE, we've brought on Monty, there's so many other people. Glitchy, Magic Twin, Barrel, or Kath. I'm gonna miss someone, I can tell. Myron. Oh, too many. Too many to remember. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Wow. So across your whole journey, as you are like making worlds and getting involved with Sonar from how you first got in with your preconceived notions, how has VRChat opened up to you in terms of your thoughts of it from when you first thought of your preconceived notions to now? How much has it changed?
Well, I mean, the first notion was, oh, they're all anime avatars or they're all furry avatars, which, like, 2 years later, look at me. So, like, I'm
Fair.
like, yeah. That was the big first one, and then, like, looking into the history of VRChat and how most of the models came over from Kumiku Dance because they were, well optimized and they were easily rippable. That kind of stuff just kind of interested me, and looking, into the history and how VRChat itself has grown,
Hmm.
just in general.
Okay.
Yeah, the main preconceived notion was just, oh, they're all anime girls or furries. And I mean, it's not incorrect, but but there's so much more there.
Hmm. Fair. So, with that said, what were some of your first worlds after you came back and decided to get back to it? What were some of your first worlds made, and what are some of the things you're most proud of that you made?
The first worlds the world that I guess put me in not even a public spotlight, but like the world that made me start getting in contact with people was the boiler room, and that's the
Hmm.
one that I kind of worked on with virality in order for them to then use that world for their weekly events. And then that led to, boiler room 2. I started Sonar, Spillways, which at the moment is the biggest world that I've made, with, I think I checked last night, it was 33,000 visits, which
Wow.
in the grand scheme of VR chat isn't huge by any means, but we have a group or two using it pretty much every week
Hmm.
now for whatever they want, basically.
I would say don't down yourself. 33,000 people is still quite a lot. If you put that in perspective, that can fill some, if not most, stadiums. So give yourself some kudos.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, and in terms of what I'm looking at now, it's mainly using VRSL and mainly bringing, DMX in. So VRSL is stage lighting and particularly VRSL GI, which
Hmm.
means you get all of these wonderful colors cast across worlds further than where the actual beam reaches.
Hmm.
But yeah, dynamic lights. I'm starting to look into kind of like moving set pieces and making my own shaders, but that's a little bit down the rabbit hole. For now, I've got too many projects on the go.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Wow.
VRSL and DMX stuff.
So have you ever messed around with those two before, VRSL and DMX items? Have you messed with that before?
So VRSL, it was kind of like the first thing that I looked at when I
Hmm.
started doing club worlds, and then at the time, I felt like the performance wasn't good enough to be then put onto Quest.
Hmm.
Because I try and make my worlds cross compatible, so it means Quest and PC users can attend events. Um, the original Boiler Room did have VRSL in it, but then when I moved to making worlds for Sonar, I really wanted questies to have a really really good experience as well. So I switched to using Noriben,
Hmm.
and only now I'm switching back on the PC side because I'd like to use DMX basically, which means you can do live lighting. I've actually got a test later on this evening for a new venue that I'm collaborating with another community on, which
Oh,
I can't
wow.
say too much about, but
Ah, well then,
not yet, at least,
I
not
will not
until it's
say
fully
anything, but
announced.
you, the audience, stop, go to the description, follow this man. Everything will be down there, and just keep an eye out.
Yeah. Just humble plug in there.
Well, yeah, can't talk about it, but at some point in the future, if you come back to it, just go follow him. You may find out. You may not. Who knows? So I
um,
I do have a question for you that I've asked a couple of people who work with Unity and Blender before. Since you've been doing this so long, when you go
yeah.
into VRchat worlds or video games, do you view them differently than you did prior? Like when you go look at avatars or worlds, do you kind of view things a little differently, like an architect going into a house and going, "Yes, I see everything now," kind of thing?
It does make you kind of like poly count quite a bit. I mean, like I've got specifically this asset on my avatar. I don't know, does it show up
Oh yeah, it shows up on camera.
on camera?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're able to kind of like pixel peep almost and look around the world, and it's not 100% perfect, but
Mm.
you can definitely tell where, geometry doesn't need to be there or stuff like that. So I do go into worlds mainly to help people. Like I was in VR yesterday, basically going around someone's venue, going that can be optimized, that can be optimized, that can be optimized. You don't need that there, you don't need that there. Decimate that. Just to eke out as much performance as possible.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
because some of these systems really do hit hard.
Hmm.
So as soon as like if you can optimize it, you should, because otherwise you're going to end up with just a lot of people. Once you get 80 people in an instance, it's going to run at sub 30 FPS anyway. So you may as well, at least up until that point, you may as well try and optimize as much as possible.
Hmm. So, what are some ways people can optimize for events if you're making a world like, let's say, the one we're in now? What are some ways you can optimize that?
Well, I mean, the first one is obviously poly count. The less triangles your GPU has to draw, the easier it is. And then reducing materials so that static batching can work. I mean, the actual shaders themselves use if something doesn't need to be lit up in a specific way, and you can get away with a cheaper shader, then like why not?
Hmm.
Right? Why choose to use like a stupid advanced shader on a thing that's in the shadows in the corner of the room that just like, and if that's the only asset that ends up using that specific material, do you
With that said, you're going into optimizations. How, like, if an item is in the corner, then you don't really need that shader, and then right after that,
yeah.
you're this is where you left off.
So like if an item is in a corner and it's the only item that like you use that material for, and it's in the shadows, and almost no one is ever going to see it unless it's like an Easter egg or something where it's like, ah ha ha funny.
Hmm.
I'll just go like, all right, I don't need that. Like it doesn't need to eat up the volume or the rendering. And it's the same with like sight lines. So creating worlds that have a very narrow sight line, so people aren't gonna go, all right, I'm gonna peek up and over that like waist high wall to the other side, because I don't need to know what's the other side of it if the wall is a full height. But it's just there's a lot of good GDC talks, game developer conference talks that you can find on Archive, talking all about level design and talking all about optimization in games, and like plenty of stuff online that's just how to optimize.
Hmm. So, one of the things you mentioned is like oop, having things hidden behind walls. So, I take it if something's hidden behind something, it won't render what's behind, like the wall, for example, or a tree or something.
Depends if you do stuff like occlusion culling. and depends how tight your budget or your parameters on occlusion culling is. So you can do that. It's more the idea of like, don't make worlds with the opportunity for stuff to be hidden behind walls. Like create worlds or lay them out in such a way that you don't have all of these like nooks and crannies. It's kind of one. Well, it doesn't need to be one open space. There are so many worlds. I mean, with all of this, it's just what I've experienced. It's not like, all right, hard and fast rule, every world is a box and you can't have any more because that is the most optimized you can get. But like, I don't know. It's just what I've figured out is while making worlds, you just need to be mindful of where people are going to look and directing their attention away from the bits that are less detailed.
Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting. So I'm going to ask you another question, kind of veering off left course a little bit, but between Sonar and building
Yeah.
worlds and your collabs with other clubs and DJs, what have been some memorable experiences you've had on the platform by doing what you're doing? May I ask?
Well, I mean, the big one is obviously starting like my first world, launching my first world as an actual like club and seeing people in it. Recently, the Kick Lab opening with the with Myron and myself kind of hosting and figuring everything out. It was a bit of a disaster behind the scenes, but we seemed to keep the instance going and get all of the acts through, even though it was. Yeah, it was a bit of a disaster behind the scenes, but it was nice at the end. It was like, okay, let's debrief. We know what went wrong, and we know how to do it better. So that was a highlight. Was the Kick Lab opening? I can already say that a highlight that is coming up is going to be the 1 year anniversary.
Oh.
Because it's the first Sonar world that is not made by me. It's the first Sonar world that Monty has actually created. So it's going to be amazing to see. Like it's been amazing to see Monty go through this whole experience of making a world and asking me for questions, giving feedback, and then discovering this whole world. And I remember him like saying, I get it. I get why you make worlds, because the moment you see another person in this environment that you've created, it's just like complete light bulb moment. And they're so proud of it, and they've put so much work into it, and it's just going to be wonderful.
Hmm. Well, I can't wait to see the world. I'd be glad to see what he builds as well. What was that moment for you when you had that light bulb moment way back when and you saw people entering your world? What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, it was kind of the same. It was like, wow, people actually like this. The one thing that I've got in my worlds is like, hey, if you want to host events or if you want to do something in this world, just drop me a message, and I probably get like a person from a group or someone wanting to start a group probably twice a week now, just messaging me going like, hey, can I use your world? Hey, can I do this? Can I do that? So it's been really, really nice to, I guess, interact with all of these other communities
Oh.
and collaborate, because when it all comes together, it is incredible.
Hmm. So, wouldn't what about making worlds specifically way back when drew you to it at first? Like, what made you decide to make that box with a few cube lights in it? May I ask?
Well, I mean that was the World Aquarius by Finns that I mentioned before. It was the specific thing about that world is scale,
Hmm.
because they're very clever with how they introduce the main room of that world.
Hmm.
And it's a very cinematic experience in that I don't know. Have you been to Aquarius before?
I have been to Aquarius before. It's a very well built world.
Yeah. So you start in kind of like a waterfall. You walk through a narrow hallway. The logo appears. It turns itself into particles. The door comes down. The music starts, and then you walk in, and it's just this giant like aquarium thing that wraps all the way up over your vertical field of view. And I remember just being absolutely floored by it. And it's the same with Complex 7 when you finally get into the main area of Complex 7. It's that kind of vertical field of view being and horizontal field of view just being taken up by everything, by detail, by the lighting choice. Yeah, it's those kind of little magical moments, and it's the same in like performance worlds, like Light Dimension.
Hmm.
Like I went into a Light Dimension probably like 6 months ago, and up until that point, I hadn't really had a jaw drop moment in a while. In like a year and a half, I hadn't had a jaw drop moment. And then I went into Light Dimension, and I remember just sitting there, and my jaw was just on the floor. And I was like, "This is freaking incredible!" And it's something that like they do it. I think it's like once every 2 weeks on a Sunday night, and it's just an incredible experience.
Oh. Now, were there any other worlds you've been in as well as Light Dimension that have wowed you as well? Any worlds that stick out with you since you kind of picked up the tricks of the trade?
I mean, you start like I said, you start pixel peeping, you start looking, all around the venue and going, oh, okay, how did they model that? How did they model that? Getting in contact with a bunch of other world developers has actually made me a lot more appreciative about the tricks that people use, because all of this is held together with duct tape and prayers. That's the thing, is there's no like system that is 100% built for this. It's just everything is a janky workaround that someone thought up because we're on like the render pipeline in Unity that just doesn't really work. Oh, my hands have gone to sleep. There we go.
Hmm.
But yeah, like
Okay.
eventually, I think if we ever move to like the universal render pipeline, which I'll be honest, I don't think VRchat will. I think it will probably stick on the built-in render pipeline.
Hmm.
It'll open up a lot for us. But I mean, people have been able to literally create the way that the universal render pipeline clusters lighting, light
Hmm.
sources, and they've just injected that into VRChat, into the built-in render pipeline, which is crazy to think about. And then that's been applied to stage lighting, which is the VRSLGI
Hmm.
stuff, which yeah, AC Chosen, Z3Y, and now you've got people like Owen, Paruku, Texane, or Pamamath, all of these incredibly knowledgeable people, like changing the entire way that we interact with lighting systems, which is amazing.
Hmm. Okay, so I have questions more because I'm dumb and I don't know what some of those things are. What is the Unity pipeline and the Universal pipeline, and what's the difference between the two?
So, main thing is the built-in render pipeline is the one that you kind of start with. It has relatively limited features. The main thing that at least I understand, because I mean, I'm not a full-blown game developer.
Hmm.
I'm not really the best person to tell you the minutia of the
Yeah.
differences between them. But so far as I know it, the universal render pipeline allows you to use a lot more lights, a lot more dynamic
Hmm.
lights, and it has systems in place in order to kind of make sure that all of those lights are rendered all at once instead of light by light by light by light, basically.
Okay.
and better global illumination solvers for that. So like if a light lights up and it lights up the wall, the light that it casts on the wall, that is global illumination.
Yeah.
And you can either have like baked global illumination or real-time global illumination. And one of the big things is that the real-time global illumination is significantly better in Universal Render Pipeline,
Okay.
not in built-in Render Pipeline. But I mean, there are people. I mean, like Locks, who created Arealit, or like Pi Does Code, who did LTCGI, and then AC Chosen and Z3Y, that are just bringing all of these tools from the Universal Render Pipeline, or just from like research papers in 2016 into VRChat, which is again an incredible thing.
Mm.
There's so much development and so much passion behind actually making worlds look better or worlds function in a completely different way.
Wow. So some of the thing from the people you've mentioned who are developing things, how what is it specifically they're making or working on that makes worlds better? Like, and what do you think needs to be done to like keep the progress going?
I mean, the big one. I mean, all of those people kind of work within the entertainment and music kind of subset of VR chat. So like Owen at the moment is working on Object GI, which is their own complete from scratch GI solver.
Mm.
In order so that like screens and lights can cast GI. They're also working on the Latrix system, which means we can have proper like ray marched lasers.
Oh wow.
So you can, you know, fill your skies with lasers. And I mean those. So the Latrix system was first shown off at Slyfest 2023, which was a very early version of it, and then most recently at the Waterwolf, the Anthrocon, the
Mm.
Anthrocoaster, I think the world is called, and then at Gathering as well
Oh
was
wow.
a version of it as well. So like, and all of that is basically because Laser Stroopwafel, who is an award-winning laser, um, is it a laser jockey? I don't know. But like an award-winning laser artist in real life, for like it's been their job for the past 15 years, just
Mm.
decides, hey, what if this was in VR chat, kind of thing. So yeah.
Hmm. Wow. All right, so I'm gonna ask you another question on lights a little bit before we move on to ask some question about sonar because I'm just curious as well. What is the difference between
Yeah.
like the regular world lighting, like as you said, baked or real time versus stage lights, like the ones you have over here on the table?
So well, I mean, stage lights are primarily for highlighting people and their dynamic, and they move, well, not always move, but like
Mm.
movers or spotlights, you know, they create a spot around someone, or they move around the world and create these big light shows. Versus baked lighting is like what I've got back here or on the side. Or I mean, 90% of this world is baked lighting, and that's good. That's an optimization thing,
Mm.
is so that not each one of these light sources is getting calculated at every single frame. It gets calculated once at high quality, and then it's just static for the rest of the time. It just
Okay.
becomes a texture that you overlay. And that was something that I think it was it Quake? No, I think it was slightly earlier than Quake.
Mm.
It might have been Quake that like first did baked global illumination.
Mm.
And baked meaning you've put it in an oven, you've waited for it to finish, and then you take it out and it's done once. You can't like change it once it's baked.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you for answering all my questions on lights and all that stuff. I appreciate it. I enjoy learning things.
That's all right.
So now with sonar, what have been some memorable experiences and shows with sonar, and where as well as what were some moments where you kind of were proud of the work and the world you've done for Sonar?
Well, I mean, the big one recently was KickLab that we launched, and although, like I said, it was a bit of a mess in terms of organization. Like we got through it. We know what we need to do in the future to make sure that doesn't happen. And actually, like, so our main host is Monty. They run our open decks every single Wednesday. And whenever they go either on holiday or they need to, like at the moment they're on an internship learning all about DMX lighting and learning how to control that lighting. Um, the community ends up coming together.
Hmm.
We've got this like sister group called Radar. So we've got Sonar, and now we've got the fan made one, which is Radar. um, so whenever Monty goes on holiday or isn't around, and isn't able to host, there's always like members of our community going, well, we've made it part of our like weekly routine. We can't stop now. So how do we still do the Wednesday night thing? So yeah, Radar, and it was mainly Myron and Swiss HP, who kind of created Sonar and created Radar, and yeah, whenever we're away, a Radar instance pops up. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's nice to know that, like, even aside from all of the commanders' effort that we put in, the community, wants to do it even without us pushing, going, all right, come down every Wednesday. It still kind of like runs almost without us, which is nice.
Hmm. So, how does it feel for you knowing that something you've built like Sonar has that kind of impact on a community or a group of people? Is that something expected working with and doing Sonar?
Sorry, can you say that question again? I didn't quite
Sorry, I
understand.
apologize. Would is that kind of impact on the community something you expected while working with Sonar? Like as you guys ran it and started it and continued with it?
I don't think we ever I don't think we ever expected to get exactly here. Like one of the things is I missed the 1K. Like if you go online and you look at the how many people are in the group, we were supposed to do a 1K party, like
Hmm.
1,000 members thing, but I was just so busy and I wasn't able to make the world for it. So we're now focusing at a 2K party, and like the rate of growth that we've seen is insane, and it's something we never expected.
Hmm.
It's I mean, Sub and I mainly started this just to be kind of like, oh hey, it's a creative endeavor. Let's see where it goes.
Hmm.
But we never expected to, be coming up on 2,000 people, and not quite filling lobbies yet.
Hmm.
On our Wednesday, like we've got a good number of people that we see regularly, which is nice because you actually, they feel like they've found a place that they can come back to every single week, which is great.
Hmm. All right, so I'm going to ask you another question on the community side of things with Sonar and with what you and Sub do. What are some good ways of growing and maintaining a community, like working with the VRchat community as you build your own? What are some tips, some things you people should keep in mind?
I mean, much like every community platform, whether it's YouTube, whether it's uh yeah, VRchat, YouTube, Twitch, it's just consistency.
Hmm.
And the fact that Monty approached us and said, "Hey, you guys should do a weekly open decks, like a weekly thing where anyone can come um and run it." And both Sub and I just went, "Well, why don't you do it? Like, why don't you come on to Sonar and actually be the driving force behind the weekly events. Yeah, consistency. Because the fact that people know, okay, it's Wednesday, there's a Sonar event going on, or at least radar on the off week that Monty is away. Yeah, main thing is consistency, but also staying open about things. Because when I first got into VR chat, there were a couple of communities that I went to, and I was like, hey, how do you do this? Because I've got no idea how Unity works. I'd really like to learn this thing. And I was kind of told, like trade secrets kind of thing. And like I didn't really appreciate that. So if anyone comes to me and is like, oh, how do you do that tech on your world? I'm just gonna tell you because there's no point in gatekeeping information that will help grow this platform. And it's not even just VR chat platform, it's more like social VR in general. There's no point in stunting that growth, and the more high quality worlds and the more interesting worlds that we have, the better you're going to be in general, like across the board for social VR, not even just on VR chat. Like Resonite, I've only been on Resonite 3 times, but every single time I went to someone and I asked, hey, like, how did you do that? That looks really cool. Like 9 times out of 10, they went, oh, there you go. There's the package so that you have it as well. And I was just like, wait, you're just giving these away for free? Like, there's, obviously there's so much work that's gone into it. But I feel like everyone, at least like now, everyone kind of understands that, sharing is the way forward, and it's the way that we're all going to see the stuff grow. Sorry, my hand's bugged out again.
Nope, it's okay. I very much agree with that whole sentiment, especially since we're like pioneering, like everyone, even if you're just world hopping now, I think in a sense you're like pioneering social VR, in a sense of like world development, avatars, events, the whole 9 yards. We're very early in this kind of, I'd say, metaverse experience. I don't even want to call it a metaverse because it's dumb, but either way, the whole social VR.
That metaverse. Yeah, that metaverse term is kind of like a loaded term with all of the baggage that has come from Meta and the amount of damage that they've done from, like, what was it? It was the picture of Mark Zuckerberg with the Eiffel Tower in the background, which just went so viral, did so much damage for the public image of VR, and just the public's faith in VR to be, to be a platform that people want to go to.
Well, whatever you like, now that you mentioned things Mark Zuckerberg has done that's gone viral that I think of is, have you ever seen the one where Mark is doing an interview and someone made a meme where he looks at the interviewer and goes, want to see something cool, and just grows boobs? That's the whole clip. I think of that one.
Yeah, that's quite a good edit. That is funny. But
yeah. No,
yeah,
I very much agree. Meta's done quite a lot with the whole, we want it to be the metaverse, we're going to coin it. Well, I think they can own it, because now every day we see the whole, the metaverse is dead all the time now. And then the crypto bros too. The fucking crypto bros.
But the thing is like, the whole idea of a metaverse, everyone talks of it like, I mean, like, speaking in academic brain mode, like, the term metaverse has been used throughout history. It basically just means like a world that is not our own, that we implant ourselves into.
Mm,
And I've read a bunch of research articles all about, how certain strands of religion uses metaverses, how um like the term metaverse and the idea of a metaverse has been around for ages and ages. It's just the fact that, I mean, like Second Life. Second
mm,
Life was a whole metaverse ages ago, and
mm,
there have been tons of people that have come over from Second Life to VR chat. Like RuneScape. RuneScape is a giant metaverse. It's got its own economy. World of
mm,
Warcraft, another one, right?
mm,
So it's not like it's a new concept. It's just the fact that, tech bros or, well, it's mainly been Facebook, i.e., Meta, that has made this term almost like a taboo term in any kind of business meeting. As soon as someone starts talking about the metaverse, it's like,
mm,
okay, yeah, no, they're not in funding
mm.
kind of thing now.
I do.
But
I.
that being said,
Mm,
there are lots of research conferences that ask about social VR
mm,
and about how we can possibly work in the future in VR. But it feels like this term metaverse has just kind of been, all right, we're not using that anymore. Put it in the trash and let's find a better way of explaining it.
yeah.
Because yeah, Meta has killed that term basically.
I don't think it's just on Meta. I think the crypto bros too have a huge hand to play in that, especially since you'll see like Decentraland and stuff go, "Hello, corporate company, we have a great way for you to make money," and then they have a total people, kind of like three people, after some companies spend billions of dollars into it. I think they also have another huge hand to play, not just Meta specifically.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's one ad that I keep getting where oh, this guy cut me up in traffic, so I sort of followed him home and bought his house on like this virtual thing, or like I just bought a Starbucks and I bought the Starbucks in this virtual like representation of Earth, and it earns me rent money kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it's just like, no. I mean, I'm not the most knowledgeable on how, crypto works or on that or like NFTs or whatnot.
Hmm.
But I just kind of look at it and I'm just way put off by it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they kind of jumped the gun on the whole getting money in the metaverse thing, as they want to say it. I think they started with making money and then built out from there. And because of that, for a lot of people who spend time in social VR, it's a big turnoff. Like, I mean, it doesn't really, to me, I'm no big tech guy, so please tell me I'm wrong with this, but it doesn't seem entirely viable to build or even want to spend time in when everything's starts with a huge price point to begin with. Like most people who spend time in VR chat doesn't want to spend 8 grand on a 4 foot plot of land to build a 4 foot Starbucks. I'm gonna be honest.
like that's how Neos failed. Was the two people that were running, or at least so far as I know the story. Like I don't know if there's more details that I don't know. But so far as I know, it was like two people. One of them was more tech broy. One of them was just kind of wanting to create, an open platform for people to create whatever they want, and that drew a rift between them, and that's why Neos eventually folded. But then out of that, we got the good ending in the one that just wants to create like an open platform for people to make things, created Resonite. And they formed that studio, and now they're seeing lots of people flocking to it daily. So I guess we got the good ending of all of that, which is the actual the person that the people wanted actually, get the success.
Mm. Yes, I very much agree. So let's veer this back into you and Sonar a little bit. Um, what were some of the first events at Sonar like? Like after you guys built the world, launched the VR chat group, and started getting members, like what were some of your first events like, and what were your opinions on how they were running at the time? Were you like impressed to see people there? Yeah.
One of the crazy things that I had no idea how, because even before kind of launching Sonar, sub defense was already pretty known within, small circles
Mm.
as a DJ. So they would bring in people who I had no idea were like huge DJs. Like Bobby J, we had at like our second ever event. And like I had there are pictures, like there is full on evidence, there is pictures that Bobby J played at Sonar at like the second event that we threw. And it was just crazy because I had no idea who these people were. I was just, making worlds because, haha, light go burr or lasers go burr kind of thing. But yeah, it was nice to see like when we hit, I can't remember. We hit instance cap like 3 months into it, I think. And that was crazy to go like, okay, no more people can actually, join. We're at a point where VR chat has deemed, okay, this is a good sized lobby and we're not allowing any more people in. We just need to get like Straz or like Tupper in at some point if they ever want to come in. And like, up that instance cap to 100 or whatnot. But I think we've got a ways to go before we're at that point. Though we did Kit Collab, we hit almost instance cap. I think it was 70, 76 or
Oh
78
wow.
people that we had in. But I mean, like, who's counting? The main thing is that the DJs are having a good time, and however many people are in the instance, they're also having a good time. Whether it's one person like just having fun at the back, at least they're having fun.
Yeah. So what was when you started getting a lot more people in an instance with Sonar, were you what was how did you feel at that? Like when you went for the few people coming in to having a lot more? For you as a person, how did that make you feel seeing the growth?
The main thing is panic because it means you have to moderate and manage an instance that large. Like up until recently, we didn't actually have any kind of like official moderation staff, and it took our entire instance to go, rug pull. Okay, you now have a crazy out of control instance for us to go, okay, like the world is broken, so I need to be at my computer fixing the world, patching it in real time. Half of the people who were supposed to turn up aren't here. There's one person who keeps crashing. The stream keeps going down. VR chat servers are dying at the same time. Like, we had a nightmare instance to make us go, okay, there is definitely something wrong here. We need to scale up. We need to think about how we actually manage bigger instances and how we don't set ourselves up for that to happen again, where we do everything in our power. So yeah, panic is is the thing, because it's like, oh god, we actually need to work now. We can't actually. I mean, like there are times where towards the end of the night you can kind of sit back, enjoy the final set, because the people who are there are probably have been there for like 1 or 2 hours, and they know the whole shtick on avatar performance rating and how to act accordingly, kind of thing. So at that point, you can kind of sit back and you can go, okay, let's enjoy the fruits of our labor and let's actually listen to some great music.
Hmm.
But up until that point, it's just manically running around trying to manage people.
So from that nightmare instance you referenced, what kind of lessons did you learn to pull, and did you and your team pull from that, either from the world building side to the community side to moderation? What did you learn from it, and what are you implementing now from that event? Oh.
So the big one is communication.
Mm.
Oh, you good?
I'm good now. I survived.
Yeah. Okay, cool. the the big one is communication. So up until this point, or up until that nightmare instance, we didn't have a proper mod team. We were just kind of like, oh, you're in instance. We kind of know you. Okay, you're mod now. We didn't have mod training because so those people were saying, oh, you need to do this. And it was like, well, actually, they don't, or like in certain cases things were going left untreated when they should have been treated. We didn't even do the like Discord mod chat, so halfway through that instance Vesturo ended up like coming in and going, right, I am sorting this shit out. Like I am sorting this out. And they were amazing. They basically sorted the whole mod stuff. So now we've got this asset which like allows us to mute and talk in Discord whilst also being in game. Yeah, communication is the big thing, and then training. Because the Myron, the person who was hosting that instance, hadn't actually had any previous experience hosting, and that was on me. As kind of like the head organizer for this for Kick Lobotomy, which is the event series, which we're doing another one, which hopefully goes better this time. On the I think it's on the 20th because it's Myron's birthday. So we're going to do a shorter Kick Lobotomy on the 20th. So 14th and 20th are the 2 dates that we're looking forward to at the moment.
Oh, well, be sure to send me posters and stuff. I'll help promote the event as well if you'd like.
Will do. Yeah.
Sounds like you guys learned quite a lot in a very short period of time. I can understand why your answer was panic.
Yep.
So, with what you do with world building, what are some tools, tips, and things you use to building worlds that you like or that are part of your permanent toolbox? May I ask?
Bakery is the big one, and I'm sure every other world creator that you've had on this podcast has just said bakery, bakery, bakery. Get it. It will make your worlds look incredible. And if you have an AMD GPU, I'm sorry, I don't think there's an alternative to it for AMD. But if you've got an NVIDIA GPU, go and get Bakery because it's incredible. The other thing is learn to UV map. Learn to properly UV map instead of having Blender automatically unwrap your models. Because then you actually get to control where kind of like the pinch points and where the bad bits of the UV show. So like trying to look around for an example of the UV mapping. I guess like a famously bad object to try and unwrap is a beanbag.
Yeah.
And if you let either Unity or Blender automatically unwrap that for textures, you'll end up with all of these horrible, like, angled cracks in it, in the texture, where it just won't look right. Whereas if you do it manually, you can set all of those horrible angle bits to be in areas where people won't see. Like in this case, for the world, I've faced them all towards the wall. So all of the UV seams are facing the wall, so people can't see them. So manually, like learning how to manually UV your models is night and day for me. I can go into a world and I can say, okay, this was done automatically, or this, someone spent the extra 20 minutes in order to manually unwrap this item. And for that, the most useful tool that I have found is ZenUV, which is a Blender add-on. I think it's like 25, $30, but it saved so much time. There's nothing that it does specifically that you can't do in default Blender, but it just saves so much time. And then that and UV Pack Master as well, which will just pack your UVs and make sure you get, the best kind of result out of it that you can get.
Okay. Wow. So, what did it take for you to include those in your basic world building toolkit for those things you mentioned before? There's certain things or conversations you had that you stuck with you. Meaning, like, I got to use this now, or was this something you learned over time?
It was just over time. Like the first world I made used the inbuilt light mapping from Unity, and then like a couple of worlds after that, I started getting interested in lighting and how to make, shadows look good, or how to make. It was actually stuff like a do like slightly. No
Hello.
worries.
Sorry, we had a bit of technical difficulties. VRchat servers went burr for a second. But what were the moments that led you to using those items in your world building toolkit? Was there anything specific, or was it like something you built over time?
Yeah, it was just a over time thing. Like the first couple of worlds that I built were using the inbuilt light mapper.
Mm.
And it took for me to try and do a duvet cover, or like it's those kind of like more organic, almost simulated shapes, because I loved Wispy Woo's worlds, and they had lots of blankets and lots of cushions, and I was like, hey, I want to do, I want to learn how to do that kind of thing, because I knew it wasn't, well, I mean, it might be hand sculpted, but I'm pretty sure they just do like a bunch of simulations and then touch it up with hand sculpting. But like, yeah, that's where I started having issues with UV mapping, and that's where I was like, okay, I need to actually learn UV mapping, and I need to learn about stuff like spectral highlights, which like if you look at my profile, I'm not sure how many worlds it says is there. I think it says like there's 13 worlds there or something. I have like 70 worlds that I've
Oh,
just been
wow.
testing on. They're just all private worlds where I was just like testing a certain technique, or like a UV, like I've got an entire world dedicated to like manual UV unwrapping
Mm.
and like creating. Oh, that was it. I was trying to make a plant bowl, or
Yeah.
like a plant pot, and then because of the specific like topology, like the rounded shape, the inbuilt light mapper was having like a really tough time with it. And then that's what made me go like, okay, I need to learn how to actually make this properly, um, and how to UV unwrap. And ever since then, it was like, okay, UV unwrap absolutely everything, but then let Unity do most of the light mapping. And then at some point, I got annoyed at Unity. So I went, okay, I now need to do my texture maps and my light maps all in Unit or all in Blender. And that's when I started looking at Bakery, because it is just an incredible tool
Mm.
to make worlds look prettier, I guess.
Okay. Well, thanks for explaining that. Um, where How did you find out about these tools to begin with, like the bakery and the UV unwrapper and stuff like that? How did you find out about them?
So ZenUV was from one of those like weird videos where it's like the top 10 Blender add-ons you need.
Mm.
And it was like, oh, that looks cool. I like the workflow. Okay, grab it, give it a go. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is brilliant. I love it. Go for it.
Mm.
Bakery was, I think Bakery was a suggestion that I get from, I think it was from Iron Biscuit, told me that Bakery was like, would like be my best friend in terms of baking, lighting, and making worlds look better, because I went to a bunch of their worlds, and they were the first person that kind of, like, in that time when everyone was just like all cagey about the technology they were using, Iron Biscuit was the first person to go like, oh yeah, no, we'll hop in a call and I'll show you how I do mine. And I was like, oh, that's refreshing, thank you.
Oh wow.
So that's how I learned. Yeah, that's where I learned about Bakery, I'm pretty sure.
Hmm. So, how many people in VRChat would guided you in a sense of in world building? Is there anyone that means like spends time, like Iron Biscuit taught you? Anyone you look up to that you've worked with? May I ask?
So many world builders that I look at and I'm still like astounded by. And it's more gone towards the shader based stuff. So people like Apple, Apple Blossom, Silent, like I mean, like Owen, right? Creating an entire laser system and a brand new GI, or a brand new GI system. Those people who are creating the tools for the world developers to use, like those people are incredible. But then also people like Swar, like the amount of detail and the artistry that goes into creating a world like Sanctum. And I know it's not just Swar that does. I mean, like Sanctum is a huge team to make that world look as good as it does.
Mm.
Yeah, there is a lot of people that go into it, but I love Swar's modeling. At least I'm pretty sure it's Swar that modeled it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I have last three questions for you before we wrap this whole thing up. And
Yep.
the first one is something I think Raptor would not forgive me if I didn't ask. What is the weirdest thing you've seen in VR chat?
Oh, the amount of things that I've seen in Just Be Club, and it's the original Just Be Club, not like Just Be Club 2 or 3, or I don't know what number they're on now. The original one, there's a Vor asset
Oh
that
no.
teleports you to like a stomach beneath the ground,
Oh god.
like because it uses VR stations. So like you click on it and it like teleports you beneath the ground. That is really disturbing. Yeah, that's probably the weirdest. Like not hating on if that's anyone's thing. That's just not for me.
You saying that just gave me flashbacks of when one of my friends portal sniped me and ended up sending me to a vor world, which is a stomach that you get spawn in. You hear the sounds, the stomach kind of contracts and does its thing, and oh god, don't. Thanks, I appreciate that.
there's probably a rave world out there that is in the stomach of someone, which is a disturbing thought. But like, I mean, it's kind of, if it's on the internet, it probably exists somewhere.
I
But
honestly hope there's not
if
a
not,
vor
there's a
rave world. Please no. And if you got the idea, please don't. Just don't.
yeah. I was gonna say, like, we've just given you the idea, but please refrain from doing that. Nah.
Watch this one dude is gonna
Like,
start world building inspired by you, and they're gonna credit you in the rave world right there.
is that the lasting legacy that I leave? Is that my mark upon VR chat? Is being responsible for this goddamn rave world?
And second and final question: your name, Llamahat. Where did it come from, and why do you continue to use it?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure if you've seen a sorry. I'm not sure if you've seen the video Llamas in Hats.
Yes, same. It's from the same person who did Charlie the Unicorn, I believe.
Yes, it is, yeah. So for whatever reason, at school, like my entire year just started going Carl that kills people at me, and that just kind of like stuck. So
Hmm.
that's where like the llama hat comes from, is just because people would shout at me going, Carl that kills people, and where are his hands? So yeah,
Nope.
that just kind of stuck.
Ah. Well, thank you for sharing. And last question is the avatar you're using. Why do you use it, and why? What does it mean to you?
So this avatar was made by Magic Twin, who's also one of the staff members at Sonar. They've created so many of like the staff's avatars, or at least they've had some help in so many of the staff's avatars. Um, the specific like reason behind kind of the gray, white, orange. Orange is my favorite color. And specifically behind the scales, I've got a skin disorder that
Hmm.
means I have very dry skin, and it shows up as almost scale like. And I just figured it was kind of a way to go like, hey, it's cool. I'm now a scaly dragon. That's like orange and white and black.
Hmm. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing, and it's been an absolute pleasure getting to meet and speak with you, hear all about you and Sonar and your history. So thank you for allowing us into your world a bit. So thank you.
No worries. Thank you for having me on.
Hmm. Now, I would say Raptor do the thing, but Raptor's not here to do the thing. He's currently working fixing a sewer somewhere in the United States, which I'm sure he's enjoying. But I'll start with a question
Oh
for you,
gosh.
the audience. One is, what's your favorite VR chat world? We heard Llama Hats here, one that inspired him to become a world creator. What's yours? What's your favorite world? And since I approve of his favorite color, if your favorite color is not orange, you're wrong. Have a good day. See you in the metaverse.